Thank you very much, and welcome to this week's edition of the Citizens Chat Show here, where we follow matters regarding the current affairs of our country, and of course matters pertinent and impactful to you, our dear citizenry. This week in hot news, both in Uganda and Kenya, of course, is the story around the arrest of retired Colonel Kizza Besigye, former president of the Forum for Democratic Change, and an eloquent political activist, at least the most eloquent in our time since President Museveni took over last week while he was at Riverside, a suburb in Kenya, in Riverside Apartments. His news started to circulate about his disappearance. That went on for about 4 days until he happened to be produced in the court-martial here in Uganda, in Machinde, where he was charged for illegal possession of weaponry. This has sparked national concern, both in Uganda by different players, but in Kenya, where we saw human rights groups and other groups coming out to question the legality of such an arrest. Of course, this follows the arrest earlier this year of 36 members of the Forum for Democratic Change in Kisumu, who were recently released. Of course, in question today is a quest to understand this emerging trend of operations, which is unlike what we have seen before, at least in my time. Maybe my colleagues, panelists saw it, but at least in my time, these are new developments that we hadn't seen before, and we are trying to digest them, and indeed the citizenry is trying to digest them. And to guide us in that journey, we have two panelists today. On my immediate left, Mr. Dr. Ojambo Robert, who is the head of Department History at Kyambogo University. You're most welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Olaa, and I'm happy to be here this afternoon.
Yes, thank you very much. And of course, we have Mr. Othieno Joseph, who is a UPC ideologue and a media personality. You're most welcome.
Thank you. I am sad to be here, particularly to discuss impunity in Uganda, illegalities in Uganda, criminality in Uganda, and almost certainly an exported illegality, impunity, and criminality in Kenya in 2024.
Yes, thank you very much. And of course, to start off from there, of course, we saw the Minister of Guidance, National Guidance, Chris Bariumusi, who is also the government spokesman, coming out to state that, this is extradition, and it's normal that when laws are breached, when laws are breached, countries have treaties where the accused can be extradited back to face the hands of the law. What do you make of that interim government statement?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Chris is a medical doctor. He's a fantastic guy, by the way, Chris Bariumusi. He can pass for a friend. At some stage, he was an extremely reasonable voice of reason in Uganda. And I also recall him very particularly at a time when there were suspicious deaths of eminent Ugandans. He got involved in that process, told the stories. I was lucky to have shared space with him in which he gave context, background, personal experiences, and revulsion to the excesses and impunities of a state. But anybody who gets and holds ministerial briefs should be able to have the capacity to go through what in other countries they would call the red box, meaning the ministerial formal suitcase or bags. And so that is about reading briefs, contextualizing details, and breaking apart whatever is contained. And so to invoke legalese and to suggest extradition, in this case between Kenya and Uganda, on the basis of the information that we have, is actually to expose the manner in which, as a regime, this guy is fundamentally failed. Kizza Besigye was, to all intents and purposes, kidnapped. If
You wouldn't refer to it as an arrest?
no, and interestingly, you're the lawyer here. I was hoping that this panel would be graced by a lawyer from NRA.
No, I am.
But,
yes.
But
Yeah.
as an anchor, and it's very timely for you actually. But I was hoping that we would be flanked by an NRA lawyer who would speak formally and maybe contextualize the voice of Chris Barumuzi. That lawyer is a fantastic friend who likes to line up and list his CVs, including practicing law at big levels, including at the UN. That's my good friend, Comrade, which is a great guy. But unfortunately, he's not here for reasons maybe that may be confined to Chad on the road. But point is, when an offense is committed within the jurisdiction of a specific nation state, what is expected is that the security services, security forces of that state arrest, you hold the person, you arrest the person. To hold that person, you must make sure that you subject that person through the due process of the law
and their rights
in that country,
taking
into account everything else, including their rights. Did that happen? In Kenya, the country that the other day was getting free accolade from Othieno of Nagongre of the Republic of Uganda, that maybe they're slightly a little bit ahead of us when it comes to these excesses of impunity. But sadly, of course, it appears Comrade Ruto, Daniel Moy, Arap Moy's student of excess impunity and dictatorship, seems to have extended his postgraduate, thesis to include references from the Republic of Uganda under the impunity of Mr. Museveni. So, if Kizza Besigye committed an offense in Kenya, you expect, and again, the Kenyan judicial system within the region, again, would be one which would praise and hope that they would be so judicious, unlike this one here under NRA, where matters of judicial review, including like my case, which should take 4 months, 6 months, is now 4 years, and people in the judicial services, including ministers, are mute. They've now gone they've become deaf. So in Kenya, you wouldn't expect so. Comrade Ojambo, what you would expect would be that Besigye would have been arrested, and particularly because he's a prominent public figure, national and regional figure, suddenly up to international regional figure. Besigye ought to have been arrested and arraigned in a decent average court of law in Kenya. And particularly because one is a foreign citizen and two, a person of eminence. Sufficient information is shared with the public of the Republic of Kenya. Did it happen? No. So to date, what we don't know is whether or not NRA, specialist bandits formerly from Luwero, are the ones who went and followed Besigye, their former colleague in Nairobi, and packed him and a car boot. That is criminality. We don't know. Or they did it like NRA plus Kenyan security services, as it was alleged during recent elections, join hands to do this thing. So there was nothing legal about it. So I read Besigye in the court of law, and I'm giving you still the answer. And for my good friend and brother, younger brother, Chris, I'm still older than you, Chris Barumus. So I read him in the court of law and let him go through the formal, proper judicial process. In fact, what normally would happen, Kenya should be so angry that if particularly it's the case that's the matter involving, as alleged, firearms. That's a serious national security matter for which Kenya should be so interested, not only on Besigye and his co-accused, but Besigye co-accused and accomplices who may or may not necessarily include, must almost include some Kenyan citizens and others. So hold them. And that tomorrow, if say Ugandan authorities comes in, Mr. Museveni, okay, Mr. Museveni, Museveni should come up and say, no, I am very concerned that the country for which I went and broke people's necks in Luweero because I want to protect them. And Museveni, you better watch some of the videos that we're busy telling lies to the people of Uganda. Oh, but they did this and people were in impunity. And you're doing it and you're doing it. And of course, no, but did not do it. But then the point is this. Mr. Museveni would expect, as the ruler of this country, to pick a phone and say, hey, young Mr. Ruto, what is this that I see the headline that one of my citizens, that's what we talk about, is in Kenya what has happened. The first thing that the Republic of Uganda and the normal government would do would be an instruction from the head of state, I'm teaching them, head of state to instruct the Kenyan, Ugandan mission in Kenya, consular services, so that Ugandan consular mission gets involved and makes sure that Kizza Besigye is accorded a due process of law, his health and life and everything else is in good shape. And maybe if they find that Besigye was maybe in not a very good health condition and the Kenyan hospitals are not particularly good and Besigye is sick, he needs special medical treatment, and because Pinetis, Museveni, Kofi, Luboy, specialist global hospital in Uganda is better, beg the Kenyan authorities, that guy, please bring, that guy's condition is so bad, bring him out to us. And the Kenyan authorities would normally say that, look, no, we need to complete the due process of law here. And that will now become diplomatic part. We want our citizens back, we're not sure. That is the normal thing that should happen. You realize that I'm focused, particularly on Kenya, for young Mr. Barumus. That is what should happen. It did not. Now, on the other hand, if it is the case that Ugandan authorities, meaning the NRA authorities, have any issue with Kizza Besigye in Kenya, they provide that information to Kenya. And in any case, if anything has happened, which we don't know, fine. As I said, first, Kenyan authorities get involved. But then, once it becomes apparent that Besigye has committed an offense in Kenya, but an offense that connects, is linked to another breach of the law in Uganda and has got maybe national security implications in Uganda, then the Ugandan authorities again also go through a proper legal process here in Uganda, and then ask for extradition. Ask Kenyan authorities that this guy has done ABC, either on the basis of the evidence you guys have provided, we give it to us, or based on our information, this guy is wanted back home. Bring him back to us. That is what process would be roughly, in a non-legal terms, the extradition process that would evolve. It would not involve, and that would not happen overnight. No, would it necessarily happen in a manner in which we hardly know anything about it. So Chris is being disingenuous. He's a decent guy, but he should stop perpetuating impunity and an NRA regime that he knows is fundamentally wrong. All right,
thank you very much. And of course, gives us good light into at least expect out of due process, be the case, which we don't know for now, that was it Kenya that was interested, because if he left Uganda without through the ordinary means, you'd imagine you'd have been checked, and if it was Kenya then interested, you would have to be arraigned in Kenya, because that's a threat to Kenyans.
Indeed.
And on the other hand, if it was Uganda interested in him, there would still be a particular process followed. I think that gives some good light into
And if you
what
don't
is
mind-
expected.
And if you don't mind, just to help with that,
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. So, meaning therefore that if there's nothing wrong with Kenya, what I expect of Ruto, you know, and you Kenyans, you know, you go like this. What I expect of Ruto would be to say that, look, you know, this guy is our guest under international law and under the decent spirit of this African community, you know.
Yes.
Is our decent guy, is our citizen. After all, the EU thing, the East African community thing, they always keep on boasting and pretending that we are one people, kind of stuff, you know. He's come home, he's come to his other home here in Kenya. We're looking after him, they're doing book launch and things like that. He's not committed any offense down here, but you know, if you guys are wanted, in the very least, security would possibly go and say, okay, let's follow in case there's some basic threat here. The guy goes through the process of his book launch processes and leaves Kenya after 1 week and returns to Uganda, and you deal with him from Entebbe International Airport. That's what ideally Kenya would do. And also commonsensically, that is what you'd have expected of Comrade Museveni and his regime to do if it was a normal democratic government like a UPC government would.
All right. Thank you very much. Doctor, what's your comment on the developments we saw regarding Dr. Kizza Besigye?
Yeah, thank you, sir. I'll just first use this opportunity to congratulate the Center for Constitutional Governance for the nice function that was there on 15th of this month, on Friday.
Yes.
Where we participated. It was a great thing, where people are sharing ideas about constitutionalism and our country in general. You know, in Uganda today, such things are diminishing, where people sit in and they are discussing their country, and they are not attacking anyone, they are not looking for a platform to gain political mileage, just discussing the way things are. It was a fantastic thing. I remember asking my senior colleague, which, how come I don't see the things in government? It's supposed to be done by the Electoral Commission, by Ministry of Justice itself. And one of the guests was the Minister of Justice. Sometimes I want to call him Mr. of Injustice, because a lot of injustice is taking place here and he's just quiet. And all these things that we are discussing today. So I want just to give you what you have asked in three perspectives.
Yes, please.
From the Kenyan perspective, and then we shall come back to Uganda. You know, one time when I was still a very young man, there was that September attack on the White House and
September 11. Yeah.
September 11, 2011. And until then, I never took Bush very serious, Bush Jr., because of the propaganda that had been given around him. And that man spoke for 3 hours, and I was glued on TV listening to him. And he spoke very well, and he earned my admiration. He's one of my very good US presidents, irrespective of what people think about him. You can't compare him to
irrespective of Iraq.
You don't compare him with these presidents of US today. Who something happens and they even forget what to say. And that man gave a statement. One of the key statements in his speech was that whether they bring terrorists to justice or justice to the terrorists, justice will be done. So I thought about that statement. They bring terrorists to justice or justice to terrorists, justice will be done. And he was pushing for attacking Afghanistan and those other places. And many Ugandans were very skeptical, saying, you should not do that. But for me, I thought I was with him from that statement. Now, in this case, whether Kenya defends itself or keeps quiet, they're in a total mess. Whether they say that they were involved or they convince us that they were not involved, they're in a very total mess. Now, if they say they were not involved, then it is a huge embarrassment. It means Kenya now is at the level of Somalia and these other countries. And I just want to give you evidence that Kenya, for the last 2 years, has been a very terrible place. In fact, people who lived in Kenya during Moi, if they resurrected today, they would think that Moi is back. As we speak now, on record, there are 1,376 abductees who have been abducted in Kenya. Some, nobody knows where they are. Some are dead, were found dead, including a school girl who was just going to school, was abducted, killed, and thrown, a university student. Especially after the Gen Z event. Total 1,376. The good thing with them, they have statistics. They are not like us here where we are not even sure how many. Now, what about coming in? And the Kenya, Mr. Chen, they are not denying that Besigye was not abducted. I have listened to all official statements. They are all saying the man was abducted. But
And they use those words.
The debate is whether the government was in the know or did not know. But abduction is because
Please.
if it was arrest, this man was at Riverside. He was supposed to be taken to Riverside Police
That's
Post,
right, yeah.
because there is a Riverside Police Post there. Then, if it was to go to court, he was supposed to be taken to Mlimani Court, which is in that jurisdiction. If the man had 2 pistols and 80 bullets and other things as they allege, because the worry should be the bullets are from where and the pistol is from where. The pistols are from where. The man went through Jomo Kenyatta Airport through official means as a passenger on a commercial plane. He did not go as an entourage of maybe a military attaché or what. This man went there. So there is no way you can pass at the airport, Entebbe and Jomo Kenyatta, even with the razor blade in your pocket. You cannot. So either you tell us that the security system at Entebbe and Jomo Kenyatta has collapsed.
Is weak.
Now, the guess is, if it is true, these 2 pistols, which the man was going to come and use to change the country, I think he was going to become a Van Damme or a Chuck Norris of some sort, because 2 pistols, what can they do? Even in my home, let them come. They can't do anything. So it was supposed to be a crime committed against the Kenyan government. Then he would be arrested. Now, you talked about extradition by my very good friend, and Othieno was right. This is the problem of bringing people who don't understand things. Because if Baryomusi knew what extradition was, he would remain silent.
Because it's very much procedural.
He would remain silent. It's one of the most difficult things to achieve in international diplomacy. In fact, the easiest is deportation. If this man was an embarrassment, he has been found in Kenya, and they don't want to deal with his problems, they would just bundle him in a plane and take him where he has come from. And that is, that would be the agent. The other one is very difficult. The most recent was about this man, Jamil Mkulu. Jamil Mkulu was arrested in Tanzania after being trailed for a very long time. My friend, there was a lot of debate between the government of Tanzania and the government of Uganda on how this guy should come back to Uganda to be tried of crimes which were terrorism. You know, terrorism, with the terrorism, things are even difficult. But even then, because Jamil Mkulu had been already declared a terrorist in this place. But even then, they had to go through the normal process of court. Uganda applied and filled all the things until they prepared and said that this man, when he reaches Uganda, there is nothing bad that is going to happen to him. And the crimes had been committed in Uganda, because they say in Western Uganda he had committed
ADF.
those crimes under the ADF. In this case, the crime is committed in Kenya. So Kenya has a very big problem. And I just want to give you 2 examples. There is a gentleman called Dr. Koech. He's the national chairperson, National Security Committee. This is what he said. He says the nation
of which country?
Of Kenya. He said the nation is worried. And the incident is regrettable. because I knew this was a security matter, I had to come here with the evidence this afternoon today. So I am doing the way we normally do. Because write papers. If you call me to police, I say no. The only way you can talk about that paper is you to write another one with evidence. You don't just say, oh, I don't like what you have said. So this man gave a scenario that Kenya has been unfortunate. That in the last 5 months, 4 governments have come into Kenya and abducted people and taken them. The government of Ethiopia had a problem with one of their people whom they assumed to be organizing with the dissidents there. He was in Kenya. They just walked in, picked the man, and went away with him. The government of Southern Sudan, of all governments, Southern Sudan, did the same. The government of Turkey, the proprietor of Light School, this Turkish Light School.
Yes. I remember the case.
So they are even in here we have one in Luboa. Then in Kenya also they had. That man had problems with Turkey. They just came and found him in Kenya, picked him and took him away. Abduction. And the 4th one is now Kizza Besigye. But you forget that they abducted the 30 Ugandans from Kisumu. So that one I've not yet put there. So that one shows that there is a problem in Kenya. Either the then president is trying to see how he can use abduction, and therefore he does not want his neighboring countries to accuse him. So he has agreed that because this abduction of Kizza Besigye, somebody should not deceive you that Kenyan authorities were not aware. They were aware and they must have aided. Unless you want to say that now Kenya is a lousy country. That security officers can move from Uganda, go to Kenya, pick a person, pass with him. I don't know where they passed. I don't know where they passed. But pass the border of Kenya. And you know Kenya has very good intelligence. That DCI of theirs works very well. So that is a very big problem. If they aided, which I guess is the case, they aided, then with the, to me, I think there is a very big problem with Kenya right now because extradition has processes. And extradition normally is in 2 circumstances. The first circumstance should be that Ojambo has committed a crime in Uganda. And for that matter, we feel that his being in Kenya means that some rights and obligation will not be fulfilled here. So we talk to the country where he has gone, that this guy is there, but he's a criminal. So they agree on the processes, how they are going to protect him, he's going the due, in the due process and so many things. And then the man is transferred to come and answer his charges. The second option is recently what happened in Saudi Arabia, where we had problems with our Ugandans who were in Saudi Arabia, and they are arrested there.
Yes.
And we fear that their law is very tough on those offenses. So we negotiate with Saudi Arabia. We say, why don't you give us those people, since they are our citizens. So that we try them from here. In fact, forgive them. Please forgive them so that they come back.
As long as they're out of your...
I remember it also happened with the 2 former minister, Musumba, and the MP, this MP, the one who is the vice chairman of this thing here. This thing of Kainerugaba is called what? That thing.
PLU.
That thing, Pilau. The vice chairperson of PLU.
And I think there was an artist also in China some time back who was arrested with cocaine. Yes.
Irene in Namubiru.
Yes.
So there have been those cases. And the processes are as tough as you can see them. Like Musumba, they were there for over 3 months. For Irene Namubiru, over 4 months, they were just negotiating with China. Musumba was with India. And this was a former minister. And a sitting MP who were caught there. And they had to negotiate for them to come back here. And when they came back here, I didn't see them being taken to a court martial or anywhere. So that is number one. But number two, the biggest problem is the person is picked in Kenya. He has not written a statement because there is no information showing that that person has written any statement anyway.
In Kenya.
Because they asked the PS of Foreign Affairs called the Korir Sangoi, doctor. And he said he was not aware. In other words, he was avoiding any official record. Of course, militarily they can do it, but they can't put it on record. So the man did not write any statement in any police in Kenya. He only comes here, and it is only when people have made noise, almost filing a case of filing a case of habeas corpus. That's when the man appears at the General Court Martial. And when he appears at the General Court Martial, it is alleged, and I will not fear, because I will not fear to discuss what is happening in the court martial, because already, in my view, it is a case in futility, in my view. Because the High Court has already pronounced itself. No, the Court of Appeal has already pronounced itself on that matter. And you know, when a court pronounces itself and you appeal, the only thing that remains is that it did not quash the ruling. So the ruling still stands. You are the lawyer, you're going to guide me. The appealing and the matter has not been heard cannot quash the ruling. So the ruling stands. As we talk right now, the General Court Martial is not supposed to try civilians until that ruling is overturned. So I don't fear. Number two.
But has been going on just for purposes.
Yeah, of course, illegally. It's an illegality. It's an illegality. But the ruling of Musoke, Kakuru, and Chirabwire.
Yes.
Versus, of course, there were two descendants who descended, Mujenyi and Butera, but they lost. It was a 3-1. A 3-1. So that ruling stands.
Yes.
And therefore, General Court Martial trying civilians is illegal. And that's why Besigye yesterday put up a hand and said, please, you are trying me in a wrong court. Now look at the charge sheet. The charge sheet says, among other things, that this man was holding a meeting with the dissidents in one of the apartments in Nairobi. I don't know which one, because
Riverside Apartments mentioned.
They mentioned Riverside Apartment is not one. That place is big, but I don't know now which one. And with him, they found him with 2 pistols
and 8 rounds.
8 rounds of firearms, and that's what they are charging him. Now the trouble is, have they confirmed that those? Did he leave? He stole them? Are they charging him of theft? That he stole them from Uganda?
The charge is that those weapons are private to the Ugandan military.
In Kenya? Look at that. Isn't that stupid? You need to be really an idiot. In Kenya, the thing is found in Kenya. So have they confirmed that the Besigye stole them? Because now that means he stole and went with them or smuggled them to Kenya. If it is not the case, then you are charging him of what? It should be Kenya charging him for finding him with firearms in Kenya, not Uganda, unless now law has been turned upside down. But that is not very serious. The most serious thing is that I think this is going very far. Because you forget, today we are speaking because it is Besigye. Last time there were 32 young Ugandans who cried and yelled, and we did not listen to them. The girls said they were undressed, they were beaten, they have been kept in prison for... And for them, what surprises me, they were presented to a court of law in Nakawa. Now, Besigye is being presented in an illegal place because, for starters, the court martial is a disciplinary committee of the UPDF. It used to happen during the NRA Bush War that when people committed some offenses, they would be taken to a committee. In 2005, when they were coming up with the UPDF Act, they added that element of the court martial in Article 204.
Yes.
But its purpose was for discipline, to discipline army men who have committed offenses while doing their work or in omission of their work. The first time we see this court get involved into civilian matter is when they were trying the bomb, the people who had been suspected to be putting bombs here, and the ADF dissidents,
yes,
and not dissidents, but suspects, because nobody has ever proved, we have not seen any sentenced. So that matter came on until they got this MP of Nakawa. And the man, they took him to the court martial, and the man said, no, this is illegal. So for me, I think whether Besigye committed a crime, and for me, I would really believe that he is capable of committing the crime, because Besigye has ever been a rebel. He has ever been a rebel. I remember he became a rebel from Kenya. He first went to Kenya, and that's when he joined from Kenya. He joined the rebellion as NRA. So he has that history.
He has the capacity.
He has the history. He has ever done it. So we cannot sit here and defend him. But my argument is that if he's gotten, he should be taken to the due process of the law. Because the way they are doing it, nobody can believe them. Me particularly, I cannot believe in this whole hoax. It is a hoax, and I think they need to come out clean and present the right version of what they wanted to do.
All right, thank you very much, Doctor, for that in-depth analysis on the issue. I'd like to bring in Mr. Othieno, especially on that issue of due process. The incidents of trying citizens within court martial, as you say, that it was imported into the constitution, and first it was not an order of the day. It was basically you'd find ADF and terrorists, but we see the increasing incidents in the recent times with the NUP members, and now Besigye and so many other incidents, and indeed the Court of Appeal pronouncing itself on the matter, which has been shelved, of course, by the Supreme Court for now. What do you make of...
Olaa, what I insist is that the ruling stands.
Yes.
The ruling has never been nullified.
I agree. So what effect does this have on the trust of the population in this arm of government, the judiciary, and what long-term impacts could it have? Because I imagine courts, a functional judiciary trusted by citizens, is the early conflict, is the conflict management tool of the country. And therefore, if there's no trust in this system, or there's degrading trust, does that not pose strategic threat to our national journey?
We do not have a national journey.
We do.
No.
I mean, these moments are part of it.
No, we're in a national quagmire. This country was captured in July 1985 by a military group that included Museveni and DP and NRA and other forces. Museveni dumped off his other colleagues, took it up in 1986, and has consolidated militarism and excess impunity. So if there is a journey, it's a regressive journey. And so we don't want really to pretend about this thing, Olaa. And I say so very seriously. It's actually shameful, just based on the submissions, part of my brief submission, and some of what Dr. Ojambo says, and indeed your own. Here is a situation, very clear situation, of a sense of arrogance, a sense of entitlement by a bunch who came to power through brutality in Luweero, brutality in the wider part of Buganda towards Mubende, which was then the wider extended triangle, and brutality, including throwing bombs in the streets of Kampala. This is NRA bunch. That obviously, as Robert suggests, includes Kizza Besigye, who also needs at some stage to come and explain himself, possibly include to apologize to the people of Uganda. But that said, I must say that whatever Besigye did before does not justify any scintilla of action, particularly considering what has been subjected to, and particularly this very particular mess. It does not justify, until proven otherwise, that Besigye has should be able to be subjected to this. Look, number two, I think I don't want to miss this point. Number two, what confidence? Norbert Mao is a fantastic brother of mine, and friend. The other day said very openly, very public, and very decently, and he's a very articulate guy, isn't he? And he's the NRA's minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs. So this thing comes onto his docket and said officially that there is no public trust in the judicial system. And apparently there's been conversations with some other people who said, no, there is some funny mathematical statistics that has been carried out research, and I don't know which agency came up with the fact that there is confidence in public, in the public confidence in the judicial system. I don't know what the source is. Certainly it would not have gone through the academia guys of the Ojambo, so it basically doesn't meet the test. But even then, the question is, we've come to a formal trial, and who's on trial? Who's on trial is the NRA state. Who is on trial is Mr. Museveni, who mobilized young Ugandans, some of whom innocent, including Besigye, claimed that they wanted to fight against quote impunity, absence of rule of law, and abuse of the basic rights of the citizens of the Republic of Uganda. And instead of taking them to a political school somewhere in Rukunjiri, I don't know how much land his parents used to have, so that they go to their own private thing for themselves, but took them to Luwero to subject them to what he did. You subject our country to that crude brutality for 4.5 years. Take over power, and now 40 years later, you're subjecting a Ugandan citizen, doesn't have to be Besigye, whatever, a Ugandan citizen to impunity and illegality on Besigye. What is it, as they say? I repeat, if Besigye had committed an offense in Kenya, now the issue is who is the other on trial? Is the Kenyan state, Kenyan authority, Ruto, who is himself a suspect in many other ways, and I say so guardedly, but also very deliberately on record, considering his track record since Daniel Arap Moi's time. And Ruto really needs to be showing East Africans and Ugandans who are neighbors that is better than that, and that is different, and that possibly we got him wrong. That if Besigye committed an offense, a criminal offense in Kenya, like I said at the beginning, and I will deliberately repeat this, Besigye ought to have been tried in Kenya. But number two, a critical import in part to what Dr. Ojambo says, Ruto and his established Kenyan guys, take away Kenyans, because Kenyans, majority citizens of Kenya, decent people, and in fact they're really my people, and of course Dr. Ojambo and I are really mini quarter Kenyans in many ways. We'll not go to that. I know some other Ugandans will be very happy that Ojambo and I are at least also associated with other countries. Yes. In many ways. Is Ruto and his system saying that they're incapable of trying a crime committed on the Kenyan soil?
The man with the 2 pistols and 8
2
rounds.
pistols and 8 rounds.
But I mean, I think he gave.
That.
I think doctor gave us good context, because he elevated it to the last 5 months, where we have seen 4 countries check in and get persons they're targeting. So is it some, maybe it's some form of abduction diplomacy?
New wave. In fact, you have got the right name, is abduction diplomacy.
I don't know, but
But in any case, so in other words, so while it puts Kenya on the spot, Kenya says that, look, we can't do this thing. And so the Uganda is able to smile and say, we'll do it on your behalf. No, it doesn't put us in good face at all. Nor, on the other hand, does it show any good face of our judiciary. So in any case, as I said, even if they had possibly extradited Besigye, after abducting him and brought him to a civilian court, our conversation would still be questioning Kenya, but would now be lowered to slightly something else Ugandan, that maybe Ugandan authorities, because you can argue politically, I'm giving them a point, that look, we did not trust that Kenyans would give us this guy, we needed to act very quickly, because we don't know the details, you do that argument. But the way it is to take a political leader, the first, I think he was first national political commissioner of NRA. So he's a net contributor to this nonsense, anything called called NRA. And NRA's top minister, because he was deputizing DP guy. So basically it was the NRA voice in internal affairs. So basically he's a very important person to NRA. From that perspective. And then number two, he goes on to become the founding president of a political party that founds itself and beats, including UPC, to second, third place and becomes the official position political party. So it's a very important position, very important person, whatever you would say of him. So it's not somebody that just go ahead and drum up. And I've said, I think you include to your program, the first time I gave my special sympathy to Kizza Besigye, partly because of his record, as I said, association with the NRA, because I found it very difficult to respect many people associated with the background of NRA. And this is not a political statement, it's a moral statement. When Besigye was arrested and bundled like carcass for hounds, and I wrote it in my Sunday column.
Was that the Adinaitwe incident?
Yes. I looked at this
Where
thing.
did Adinaitwe go?
The
last time I knew he had run mad.
Can you imagine? So, a bit of taking you back, because we might talk about this wave of extradition diplomacy. Take us back to the trajectory of injustice, and around Kizza Besigye, where his wife Winnie, who was also part of this NRA mess, suggests that he's the most arrested person. He the Guinness Book of Records on that. Besigye was the way the guy was thrown and pushed in a truck. And I saw this thing. One, because of course I am somebody who I don't like violence, and I don't even watch violent movies. My niece would call them camera tricks. Robert, that it was anybody, but you throw a human being, and I called it in my piece, carcass. Meaning that even if it's a living goat,
you can't do that.
You can't do that. They threw this man. And I said, this is a retired military officer, so basically a senior person, a medical doctor, meaning without prejudice to class, a somebody in that sense, but a mate, one of your own. What is it that would justify a treatment of Kizza Besigye like that? So Besigye has gone through this, and as I said, from that time, that day, that thing latched me up with Besigye in a manner that it had not done before. That happened. That was impunity. Do you know who paid for it? Who paid for it? Now the problem with my country is that these things happen, and we continue tomorrow as if it's business as usual. How many of Besigye's colleagues of NRAs of the 80s, when they're brutalizing Ugandans, would say that, look, you guys, too much? How many, and some of them these days are boasting, grandfathers jumping with stolen money. Some of them came with quarter slippers from the bush. Some of them have even never had tea with bread. These guys are boasting here,
So quarter slipper, what is carrying each other? The feet or the slipper?
Whichever. And these guys today, after 40 years, You can't have a sense of humility and say, guys, this is a little bit too much, regardless of our difference of opinion. Besigye, NRA. What about the young guys who joined NRA more recently and are now sailing, whom the Besigyes and Atal can go ahead and argue that we set the foundations for you, now you're enjoying. Is it NRA for us? We're eating, we're eating one piece of cassava per week. You guys are now, enjoying malls and Uganda, central bank for free, and Mabati and everything else. You're busy just swallowing them for breakfast. So what average guys who say, look, this is a colleague, a compatriot. Why? But beyond that, where are the Ugandans who are not NRA, who are not FDC? Where are they? Why should they find this acceptable? My point is, like Dr. Ojambo said, we don't know what Kizza Besigye did. We genuinely don't know. The truth is, what is it, that crime, that offense that Besigye committed? I'm still telling you, but hopefully I'm still answering you. There is no circumstance under which, because now we're not even beginning to move a drama. Imagine, you think you've gone for a book launch. You could even have gone, the trauma of discussing how to overthrow Mr. Museveni, which discussing an overthrow of a government is possibly not illegitimate from the scheme of things, because if overthrowing, we could actually go ahead and add the definition, the law here, that look, by the way, for me as Othieno, I want this bunch to go. But I just want them to be defeated in the election. So basically you could have had also a conversation over it. But does it justify bundling someone in a bit of a card? So what crime did Besigye commit in Nairobi that Mr. Museveni hasn't? What crime? What is it exactly? So my point is that no, we're in a lawless country, unfortunately ruled by a bunch who don't believe in the rule of law. So anyway, maybe our expectations about Museveni is too much. But you get my last point, which I was making about the citizens of Uganda. Say Ugandans ought to wake up and see what has happened to Kizza Besigye, as the extreme of the other end of the seed. That it doesn't really augur well for you and this fantastic load of camera people who are predominantly young people. And Dr. Ojambo and I... let
me just give you information. Recently, I was really shocked. I was at the All Saints Cathedral, and the president was explaining, he was there. He was explaining the power that God can do things. And he gives a story that with his colleagues during their rebellion time, they were driving to the east. So when they reach Nijinja, there is a place called Kakira. They find a roadblock there. He was giving a story. And they stopped them, and he thought that they were finished. So when he was still explaining to this man, one of his friend who was driving, all of a sudden just shot one of the soldiers. And the soldier fell down. The others ran away and was crying. So he saw that the man was making a lot of noise, and he says he picked his gun and finished him up.
In church?
In church. This is a man. And the people clapped. I was really shocked. I wanted to get out of that place. And he's shooting a Uganda army officer. So...
but that is an enemy in combat.
No, that was a crime then. It was a
I
real
agree.
crime.
Crimes around.
No,
you have no right, even if the country has done what to you. How can you shoot a military officer of the country? Who is only there? He's not there because he's your enemy, but because he's doing his work. So some of you clap, just like people were celebrating this Netanyahu thing where they came and
in the U.S. Congress.
Took over this Entebbe
thing.
The Entebbe raid. And the people were there, that they were very celebrating, that Netanyahu was a hero coming to kill our people, and we celebrate.
And they did kill a lot of Ugandans.
Those are mean soldiers were not Tanzanians, were not Sudanese, they were Ugandans. In fact, I'm very happy for that person who shot that Netanyahu brother. if I knew the
soldier.
No, if I knew the relatives, I would go and thank them.
So please, relatives, if you know any association,
Yes.
please provide this program with that information. That's
I would be very
But
Yeah,
also-
as we conclude,
but
we're
just-
going into the break.
But
I think
yeah,
we're-
but interesting that also that the Netanyahu bit that you missed, which is extremely important, Olaa, is that the Netanyahus actually brought Idi Amin. You know, Israel brought Idi Amin, and Syria alleged Israeli commandos were actually in charge of the tanks in Kampala to roll in Idi Amin. You know, now.
And I think they did the Bugolobi
Indeed.
projects.
And so, yeah, indeed. But what is it there for? These guys who brought in Idi Amin becomes a mess.
To them.
Then to them, how many Ugandans died?
Then
you know,
they
I
come
lost
and kill
relatives in the early part of Idi Amin, as well as the 71, 72. You know, including my father's godson, you know, in military barracks, you know, over these things. Why? You take it back to Netanyahu. But why I think that is interesting to link up with the conclusion, meaning that Ugandans need to wake up. And Olaa, you as young lawyers and you as young professionals, you guys as you're doing fantastic job in some of the spaces, you need to critique these things, but you need to pick from some of us so that we rebuild our national narrative to say no to impunity, but also to say no in a manner in which it is possible that people who think they have excess power, including people who can shoot the way the Museveni's do on the club, you know, should not get away with it. But just to say that, look, for me, who does not believe in finishing anybody's life, actually, it's a matter of interest. What Museveni said, and I admit that, if you would expect that Museveni, who does not like to kill, the guy had already been disassembled. They had been stopped, you know? These guys should really have shot away because anyway, the guy is already
It was
injured.
making a lot of noise.
The guy is already injured. You see? And Olaa is not convinced, but Olaa...
No. I was giving a Kelsenian critique. I think let's have a brief break. When we come back, we'll continue with the discussion. Of course, what stage this sets for the spirit of the nation, and other pertinent ways in which it impacts our democracy. Thank you very much, and stick with us.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Thank you very much, and welcome back to this discussion where, of course, center to the national attention right now is the issue of Dr. Kizza Besigye, or as Mr. Shane would say, it's not sent enough to the national attention. The issue of Dr. Kizza Besigye, who was abducted in Kenya last week, but only to surface this week in the court-martial here in Machinde, where he's facing charges of holding weapons privy to the Uganda People's Defense Forces. In question, of course, is the process by which he was moved from Riverside Apartments to, of course, the court-martial here in Uganda, but of course other issues as well, the trends around that in Uganda and also in Kenya, but also whether at all is supposed to be arraigned in the court-martial. We are continuing that discussion for the next part of this episode, and I'd like to bring you in, Doctor. There are talks on the streets that this is perhaps to the advantage of Kizza Besigye, that it sets stage now for the 2026 elections, where he can now rejuvenate his image and come as one of the opposition candidates. What do you make of such, or there are non-issues at this point?
You see, the problem with Uganda sometimes is vulgarizing very serious matters. In fact, for a long time, I have heard a story told in many places in Uganda that all the opposition leaders are actors. They're just people who are acting to try and sanitize and change dictions of NRM and many things. But I look at it with a lot of I'm very, very skeptical. Because even film actors don't do real things. I have really been where they're acting a movie. I don't see people jumping from a 10th floor. At least they jump from one floor, then they zoom.
So they have stunts, man.
They zoom the thing as if he has come from far.
Mm.
Then it would be suicide. It would be suicide because I thought with the collapse of the FDC, collapse in quotes, I thought NRA was happy, or NRM was happy with the FDC of Nandala. Because that is the FDC which now has started turning yellow somehow. I don't know, when you mix blue with yellow, what happens. So that one at least you would agree. Yes, there have been that narrative that normally Besigye is there to disrupt NUP growth. And that's why, in fact, NUP people were very angry. Whenever they would hear that Besigye still wants to be, they would almost want to go and tell him to go and die. In fact, they wanted to kill him. But KB, as we normally call him, is a phenomenon in Ugandan politics. And I think, in my view, he has been consistent for some time. KB started his opposition when he was in the Constituent Assembly. Then from there he went to NRC. Then you remember his writing after the NRC. And then later there, he came up in the 1990s, the late 1990s, then to the 2000s when he stands. So I don't think that he does not have capacity to mobilize. He's one of the best mobilizers that Uganda has ever produced. He can mobilize people. He cannot go into such things because those are life-threatening things. Anybody who thinks that that was just an act maybe to rekindle his, would need to go and sleep in where that man has slept for only 2 days and be driven in that kind of vehicle. You can just die of shock because what happens there is seriously. But for me, I think, let's concentrate on serious matters. I just wanted to comment two things about the court-martial. Because the court-martial thing, my colleague here has really explained it, but I need to tell Ugandans that it's a bad thing in Uganda. I read, because of being concerned with this matter, I read the judgment that the good bench gave of Musoke, Kakuru and Kiriabwili. They argued, number one, that the thing is not paneled. It's not paneled by lawyers. The bench of the court-martial. Those characters go there by rank of the army. You may get luck and one of them is a lawyer, but they are not lawyers. They are not judicial officers. So you cannot take matters that require judicial interpretation to laymen, because those are laymen. They are military people. That's why they need, if somebody has slapped another one or another one has shot, he opened a
citizen.
Gun on citizens, there they understand. But on matters which, like now, I saw Lukwago arguing about jurisdiction. Do they understand jurisdiction? Because I remember one time that court was chaired by Eli Tumwine, may his soul rest in eternal peace. And Alaka asked him that, my lord, I am talking, but you are not writing. Because lawyers want, when you are talking, they are talking, you should be recording. Those days there were no recorders, so the lawyer, the judge would record. And the man told Alaka that I'm looking for the common law so that I read it. And he tells him, Mr. Chairman, the common law is not written. It's not written, so you're not going to find it anywhere to read it.
It's a system.
Yeah, it showed how the man was ignorant of what he was doing. That is one. Two, the court martial, unfortunately, has some legal officers who act as lawyers for sometimes the accused, but also they defend. But they don't use the penal code. They use the military something. Now, if you are judging such a case, how do you sentence a person? And that's why recently there was an absurdity. People who were supposed to have been charged, in fact were charged of treason and so many things, were sentenced 3.5 months, which is less than chicken thieves in my village. Of course, they said remorsefulness and they accepted, even if it does not reduce. So it shows you ignorant people. But the most serious one, in army, people act on order. If, for example, the chairperson of the court martial is ordered by the commander-in-chief that sentence that person to 5 months, can he object?
No.
If he objects, that is treason. That is, can be charged of subordination, which in the army is equivalent to treason. So, if you take such a person, so for me, if by bad luck I am taken to the court martial, for sure I will remain silent. I will remain silent. I will know that it's like when they throw you in a den of lions. You cannot even risk to fight. Are you going to fight with lions? So you better stay and they eat you. And if people are filming, they film as they eat you properly. So I really think, but also it vulgarizes our politics. That for me, I feel this is political. That somebody can have a chance of using the systems in the state to barricade his political power. And Yoweri Museveni has done that, which is unfair, and I hope is the last. Because in the future, we don't want our children to go through such things. For you, if you disagree with so-and-so, he's taken to the court martial. And you are happy that the court martial is going to waste their time. Of course, I'm very sure that the court martial cannot sentence Kizza Besigye. Because if it did, he will have to go to the courts. And I don't think they have collapsed. I've not yet lost all the...
You have not yet buried
the hope. They are there, but they are there crippled, but they can still talk. They will say something about it because of that. But finally, you see, the president, if you look at his history from when he became a leader, he has always created parallel structures. One of the structure that was really disturbing the president, in fact 3 of them, was the Uganda police, the judiciary, and the public service. And when you look at my very good friend Yoweri Museveni has choreographed a system where each of these has a parallel to contradict the other one. Judiciary now has a court martial to contradict it. Uganda police, you know, they brought police constables, I don't know, special what. There are a lot of police system right now in the village. You can't know who is a police officer and who is not a police officer. Public service, whereas there are ministries and organs of government which are supposed to do work, he has created another government in State House. You find IGG has its replica there. A Minister of Agriculture has its replica there. You have a minister, a defense has its replica there. Because now, sometimes I tend to ask myself, this outfit at the president's office, is it part of UPDF? See, it's called SFC. SFC. Is it part of UPDF? I don't know. So I really want to imagine that if we move on like this, it creates a very bad thing. That's why you see, even in public, you can't know which vehicle is for the government and which vehicle is for thugs. In fact, when you see a vehicle stopping you, that you are under arrest, you have to be very careful because you are not sure whether they are thugs or they are security operatives. For me, these days, when I'm moving in a place, I have put a system in my car. My boot does not open if I've not opened it. Because they can be thugs. You think they are checking you, they are security operatives, but these are thugs who are going to put something in your car, then call you later, say, hey, what is this? So you have to open the boot when I am there. And I tell them, the thing has a camera. If you
put anything
trick here, we shall see. So for me, I feel that the more they use these systems, although people may say that, okay, Besigye wants to use this thing so that he can rekindle his thing, I don't believe so. Because the suffering there, I don't think anybody would want to go through that type of suffering just to get back to the limelight. And because, you know, that military thing, you can't trust it. You can't really trust it. Now they have taken him to Luzira. Who wants to go just and live in Luzira? Is Luzira a hotel? It is not a hotel. That's a terrible place. You can even die from there. So I don't think so. Now, what about the Nupu people who were kept in that place in Communicado? Do you want to say that they want to become popular? These young men who have suffered there, the other day I was watching their prayer. It is really bad. And that's why I'm the other day I thought I would get time and speak to Mao, but I did not, because I left when they were still busy and you don't want to disturb a minister. He's a minister of justice, where so bad things are happening. And I have not seen him. He's so much concentrated on the peaceful exchange of power, which I want to assure him is not possible. That one, he's flogging a dead horse. And I have seen he has also started losing hope. He should concentrate on promoting justice in our country. People are crying that their children have gotten lost for 4 years. Their fathers, their brothers, their village mates, their Ugandans. Let's assume they are not our relatives. They are just Ugandans. And up to date, government has not come up to explain that these people are here. You remember when they killed this boxer? Zebra. Again, that time I was also shocked by the president. I saw that this man now has become... That's why I believe he's a dictator. For me, I believe he's a dictator and I have evidence. He said, you see, we sent our people there and by bad luck, they killed him. How can a country admit? Because if the president admits that our people, who are those people? Are police officers or military officers supposed to kill someone who is a suspect, who has not done anything? They killed the man, and the man died, and said, we shall correct this. We are going to talk. And madam, for you, we are giving you 15 million. You go and organize. We shall see what to do. That is how dictators operate. In this country, people understand that when people go for elections and they become leaders after being elected, they are not dictators. Dictatorship is not by election. Dictatorship is by action. What a person does to get power and how he uses the power. And he uses the power as alpha and omega. Let me use that summary. Alpha and omega. And in this country, it looks like the president now looks at himself as the alpha and omega. That's why he says, we shall crush them. We shall destroy them. Those are not languages of a Democrat. Those are languages of a military dictator. And for me, I think as we are going for election, these are just threats. This Besigye thing might be threats. And I want to give a disclaimer here. I don't know what Besigye and these FDC people go to do in Kenya. If they are planning something, we leave that to the state to handle. But only what we are requesting is that they should handle it in a proper way and stop taking civilians, poor people who even don't know what has been accused against them, to the court martial. Court martial is a disciplinary committee for UPDF. For example, they charged the NUP, some of the NUP supporters, because they were having store, they call them what? Store accessories of the UPDF. And I keep asking them that if I put on a cape,
Beret.
a beret of UPDF, do I become a soldier? I don't. Becoming a soldier in this country is known how you become a soldier. UPDF, Uganda People Defense Forces, you must be recruited. If you are an officer commissioned, given a number, that's when you become. You don't become UPDF if I go and buy a boot. Which
But you break the code, because then you can confuse.
No, if I
that
break-
loophole can be used
yes,
by thieves.
if I break the code, then take me to a court of law. I have committed an offense or a crime. I have not become UPDF, because court martial is for UPDF. If I am a poor man and I see it happening and I end up sleeping in a garage, do I become a vehicle? Do I become a vehicle because I'm sleeping in a garage?
No.
A vehicle must have the characters of a vehicle. So for me, I am saying, if a person is doing things which are done by soldiers, and I'm not a soldier, then I should be taken to a court of law and charged using the penal code, because those issues are all in our penal code.
Yes.
You can be charged criminally or otherwise. So for me, I don't agree. And that's what Kakuru argued. Kakuru said that having me carrying a gun does not make me UPDF. I may be a dissident. If they are charging these Konyi rebels, former Konyi rebels, in the High Court, why don't you take such a person also in the High Court?
Thank you very much for that interesting insight. Also for bringing back that strategic case of Justice Kakuru in the Court of Appeal, which of course, as we said, remains shelved among other cases in the Supreme Court. Which brings me to you, Mr. Othieno. Have we now reached a point where checking excesses is a futile endeavor, that there is a clean slate, it's open season for any forms of impunity? Is that where the morale of Uganda is? And if so, how do we move forward?
I've told you that we've never really gotten anywhere from July 1985. We formalized it in January 1986, and we started digging deep to entrench a military come one-party state. Yesterday's Monitor newspaper, Thursday, November 21st, has this to say. Uganda does not belong to judges or lawyers, Mr. Museveni. Yeah? Museveni said Uganda's arraigned before courts of law on suspicion of stealing PDM funds must not be granted bail during prosecution, Museveni has warned. He said he would meet the Chief Justice Owindolo to justify his position. Basically, I will talk to the Chief Justice and assure him that the country does not belong to judges and lawyers. It belongs to the people of Uganda, meaning basically it belongs to him. Because this country never belonged to the people of Uganda since Museveni came to power. Because if it did, you are not seeing any sign of this country belonging to the people if you consider how Besigye is being treated. It's a confirmation basically that it's in part what Dr. Ojambo says, that what Museveni wants, that goes. on the discussions around separation of powers and the discussions around the rule of law and constitutionalism, if you consider that the chief executive is talking this nonsense, and if you're talking, considering that Mr. Museveni is saying this in Eastern Uganda, which is currently officially, in fact, Bukedi, on multi-dimensional basis, is the poorest sub-region in the country, according to the last figures. And Mr. Museveni is talking about PDM thieves. And you know, PDM is one of the disastrous experiments that Mr. Museveni has had for several decades that have not worked. And if Mr. Museveni is talking about people who have stolen, allegedly, from PDM funds, not to be granted bail, he's presenting that he's very serious about the rule of law. But Mr. Museveni's cabinet, in Mr. Museveni's cabinet sits 22 people who are basically Mabati thieves. And I've said this again and again, and I'll repeat it. Mr. Museveni's cabinet has got Mabati thieves. And the Mabati thieves include his speaker, his finance minister, his government side chief whip, and many of his ministers. Thieves! And Mr. Museveni has done nothing with them. So you see how Mr. Museveni has localized the Republic of Uganda and turned into equipment and basically play, really, you can call it politics, but play his ball with it. It's very unfortunate that we're having this conversation, and your other question was, just to say it again?
No, I mean, are there still any facilities for the citizenry to check?
No.
Oh, it's a futile, demoralized.
No. As I said from the start, that we are a dictatorship, and the only thing that we need to do to best reinforce that point is that Ugandans need to wake up. Ugandans need to mobilize. Ugandans need to organize. Ugandans need to get out of the really sometimes very irritating comfort zones, get involved in the political process. Like Robert said earlier, that it is Besigye today, tomorrow could be anybody associated, including with you. Ugandans need to get much more involved in the political process. Get involved in political parties across the political divide. Even if they join NRA, that is basically better than standing to watch. But I think I encourage Ugandans to join progressive democratic forces like Uganda People's Congress that believe really in rule of law, manifested by our experience, but also around our values, and seek to establish themselves with a critical number that compel the push for end of impunity, demanding for rule of law and constitutionalism, demanding for a possibility that leaders emerge in the democratic opposition, including also in NRA, NRM, that there are people who recognize that the status quo is unsustainable. We begin to have a national conversation, quickly push towards national consensus, national conference around, if you consider something that Dr. Ojambo was talking about, the fantastic conference we had last week on constitutionalism, something which was hosted by Center for Constitutional Government and backed by a number of other agencies. We should have these debates. We should have more of these conversations. Political leaders from across the political divide, including NRA, engage much more, because I'm giving you that answer, as a way forward. And then we need to really agree that the status quo is unsustainable and it's taking us nowhere, and that's taking us nowhere, it's taking us to a sink. And out of that conversation, I hope we're able to begin to have a realization that all of us in this thing together.
But would you cede your claims that NRM is, I don't know if it was, I think it was Doctor, that NRM is a dictatorship for such a dialogue to continue, because NRM would contend that whilst there have been excesses here and there, overall, and of course by the legitimization of the citizens through elections, it's still the right force to continue steering, and it's still in best place to correct its mistakes and move forward. move Uganda forward.
You know, I've always,
I'm arguing in the absence of.
No, I know you.
That's
why I've always said you're one of the most impressive young Ugandans. You know the line you've taken, and I would be very excited.
So in exchange for dialogue, would you cede your claims?
You know, for me, by the way, I've been lucky to have got involved in peace processes around the world, including advising on peace and peace process and mediation. And the way you take that line is almost a very important line that you'd be giving to NRA guys when they're playing give and take. I think Rugunda around conversations we're discussing with Konya. That would be very nice for them that, well, before we do anything, please recognize that one. Although we killed in Luero, you know, that will not be mentioned. No, you know, but no. I think Goldberg Ojambo the other day on responding to bringing to this responding to Professor Lumumba, who argued along those lines that you know, we should you know, not use the words like regimes and dictatorship. And Goldberg quite rightly said that, look, in any case, this is a dictatorship. You know, it's a dictatorship, it's a military regime. No, you're a lawyer. One, a bunch, particularly since we are discussing and we are seeking to almost qualify to support NRA, that Robert and I have said that actually, if Besigye committed some offense, let him be tried. We've ceded the power and authority, unfortunately, of this republic into the hands of NRA, and we don't even want to discuss the definition of that, and we simply say that the rule of law apply. But if then that's what we do, we could go back and say this very terrible NRA, you know, picked up arms to go and break people's legs in Luero on grounds that they've never proven anywhere. By the way, Museveni and his bunch have never ever proven the grounds for their going to the bush on January 6th, 1981. They've never. They didn't prove it in the 4 years when they're in the bush. They've never been able to prove it, even when they had the power and opportunity and privilege of the state to put in the table. These are the reasons. In any case, what they've done is to perfect and in many cases do some of the actions that even never happened under Idi Amin, including some of the diplomatic perfection of diplomatic extraditions and kidnaps and extraditions that we've done. Meaning, if you look at the 2001 elections alone, there is no comparison. If you look at 1980 elections, there is no comparison. I have challenged, I can challenge this again today. List from 1980 general elections, constituency by constituency, including constituencies, I think there are one or two where they say the then members of parliament or people who are candidates went to exile. You can't count 5 cases of difficult electoral malpractices in 1980 and bring them anywhere near 20% of the criminality and the messes and the excesses that we've seen under NRA. Meaning since independence, what happened, take away of mean, you don't compare it. So to suggest that that would be the thing when I'm making this big thing, by the way, from a diplomatic and from a strategic and a negotiating perspective, I need to show NRA that they're so bad, you know, and they have so much of no leeway that the best they can have is the leadership provided by Uganda People's Congress and other sensible Ugandans to give them a soft landing. And I make an important point. The extremes,
soft landing.
Extremes indeed that NRA has committed in Luero, in Kampala, throwing away citizens of northern extraction and other places who had non-Bantu from public houses, including here in Bugolobi, one of your guests, who happens to come from Museveni's district, said here that he saw NRA guys coming to throw property from national housing construction, properties built by UPC, but throwing away properties of public servants who were in their offices simply because they didn't belong here in Bugolobi. And you go through that, and then go through the Mukura massacres, and then you go through the genocide, created and started by NRA Luero. It's extraordinary. Go to Kayunga, go to Kasese. Extraordinary extremes that has happened under NRA. But what we are saying, those things happened, some other things happened under other administrations. But this is where we are. We want the possibility that Olaa and the majority of the young guys watching this thing, that they have a possibility that there will be a Republic of Uganda governed with the mandate of the majority of the people of this country through a process, and that one that includes a presence of rule of law. And that's what we're saying. And that for you, Mr. Museveni, and your NRA bandits, together with the many others, yeah, which are facts anyway, you know, we are prepared to say, look, those happened then. Can we come to a basic national consensus? That national consensus cannot include the fact that Museveni now cannot say that he didn't kill when he told the church that he killed. That national consensus can only be said by Museveni. You know, you shot the guy as you said, you know, but let's not talk about shooting the guy. Let's talk about a possibility for Olaa having children who grew up from Gulu, go to St. Mary's College, Chisubi, yeah, become district commissioners in Rukunjiri, you know, and their daughters getting married in Ginger, and then they become the chief of coffee operations in Kampala, as it used to happen. That's what we're trying to say in our nation state. And then possibility beyond that, because you're East African, that, well, we do that and then builds a foundation in which there's a conversation between Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania, that Olaa's grandchildren can grow up in the Republic of Africa, this powerful empire called the African continent, where they're able to say, we are Africans. That's what we're trying to say.
No, that makes sense. Thank you very much, Mr. Othieno. We are coming to the close of today's discussion, but I would like to give a minute or two for a few closing remarks on this pertinent issue, starting with Doctor as we sign out.
Yeah, just to tell you that dictatorships are very complicated creatures. In fact, in biology, they only behave like amoeba. If you have studied the behavior of amoeba, it is very difficult to... Amoeba survives by engulfing its enemy, and the dictatorships do that. Remember those days when we were reading and still naive, they were telling us that one of the exciting governments in Africa was that of Libya. But remember, Libya had burnt BBC, CNN, and all these installations that give us information from... So we are only hearing their voice, the voice of Libya. When the Arab Springs came up, it exposed Libya as one of the worst dictatorships in Africa, where people are suffering that they would not even get bread. And yet we are being told that in Libya, when you are born and you're a male child, they give you a free house, a free car, a school, and what have you. But then I asked myself, why are people demonstrating because of bread in a place of... when we went, some of you who have gotten a chance to go to Libya, you find that there was only good life in Benghazi and Tripoli. The rest of the people are suffering like any other Africans in the world. So I must say that Uganda, we have reached a time when we need all of us to speak about bad things. Bad things are bad, irrespective of who they happen to. You cannot go and bundle young men and women who are attending a meeting in Kisumu, torture them on the way, mime them, present them in a court of law. I am happy that at least courts of law are sane enough that they can give bail. And that's why the president does not like them, because last week, these young men were sent home on bail. In the other thing of Machindie, you will never see that until maybe an instruction is given from above. So for me, I feel that if people commit crime or are suspect of criminal endeavor, they should be taken through the right procedure, and while that process is taking place, justice must be seen to be done for everybody. Because we don't want to create a bitter country. We don't want to have so and so in power, but his being in power creates a bitter group of people. Because this bitter group of people is going to be a destruction to our country. So for us, we want a country, as Othieno said, where a young man is born, he gets what young people are supposed to get: good education, good health, he grows up, have a prosperous family. That's how we are going to be, to reach what they want us to go. They call us what? A what economy? this middle class economy. We cannot reach middle class economy when people are still bundled in vehicles and thrown in safe houses and brutalized and killed and others disappear. Up to today, there are some people are maimed. You find a young man who was walking energetically is now beaten. You ask him, did you get an accident? That I was beaten by police. Why should the police be beating up people? So that is what we think. We don't talk these things because we have any problem with any system. We only say that what the system is doing is what makes us to talk. I don't have any problem with Yoweri Museveni. I have never had an engagement with him. I don't want to become a president. Neither do I even want to be near their circles. But if something is happening to a human being and you keep quiet, I will end with a very small story. For those who normally think that these are not our things. There was a man who bought a rat trap, and put it in the house. The rat went and mobilized everybody who was a household in that house. Said that thing is dangerous. Just think that. Showed a cock was there, a cow was there, a woman was there, a man was there. He told all those people, said, please, that thing is bad. Remove it from there. Said, that thing is for you. It's a rat trap. It will trap you. We want it to trap you because you are the problem causer here. Now, before the trap got the rat, it trapped a snake. Snake was passing, traps it. When it trapped it, the man thought that it had trapped a rat. So rushed very fast to come and get the trapped rat. It was a snake. It found it prepared because it had just been hit. It hit him and poisoned him. So the man was taken to hospital. When he was taken to hospital, he did not die immediately. They said to, the poison which is in the body, to reduce its activity, he needs to eat some proteins. So the first culprit was the cock. The cock was slaughtered for the man to eat so that it reduces the proteins. Unfortunately, the poison was too hard. I want to cut the long story short. The man finally died. In our tradition, when a man dies, they must do his funeral using a bull. So the cow who said, this thing is me, how can this grab me, was slaughtered. The woman remained widowed. Therefore, everybody was affected in that family, except the rat. It is the rat now which was not affected. So what is with us here? Dictatorship is like that trap. That trap, and power is the rat. So this thing, the trap, be very careful with it. Don't put it anywhere. So if you allow dictators to grow and become like trappers, they are going to trap a snake. And now the snake is the dictator or a bad leader. And once people who used to sing Museveni and look at him as a very good person, some of them, their families have cried, including Kizza Besigye. Used to be the doctor and he's a commissar speaking for his NRA. Now his family has cried most in this country. Remember, he lost his brother. He has almost lost his family. This man, that's why sometimes when I see people saying that he's pretending, the man has lost his family. He has a lot of problems. He has in fact sacrificed himself. So in my view, I really feel that together we need to condemn bad things, condone good things.
All right. Thank you very much, Doctor, for that, those words of wisdom, and of course with the story for our dear citizenry. And finally, Mr. Othieno, as we close.
I don't know how much better I can conclude this, but simply to say that I think whatever we do, I think we need to make sure that we end impunity. Whatever has happened to Kizza Besigye is not something that we want to happen to anybody in future. But except that for the big lesson linked, the wisdom lesson, that's quite impressive actually, to the NRA guys, is that they are perfecting not impunity, but actually perfecting precedent, meaning that a future government that is not built around my continued plea, may actually be one in which these NRA bandits, cattle thieves and the Mabati thieves and Luboa thieves and coffee thieves find themselves in the comforts of Nairobi, and who knows, maybe there might be a Trump in Britain and a Trump in America, and that a future Ugandan government says that, well, those thieves, extradite them, bring them. And if you refuse to do so, we shall have our commandos. And Olaa, I can see you can be very good training. Train you as a commando chief man, and then you carried operation read from the textbooks of the Israelis with the Netanyahus, and then you can bring up these thieves and killers back home, including those ones who've broken the necks of our people. So no, we are saying that, look, these things must end. We've suffered a huge amount of our period of independence and whatever is happening at the moment. And I said, in any case, I know we have to conclude. There was absolutely nothing wrong. And I said this to the police guys, including during my visit to the police headquarters, that there are many ways in which you can actually carry out your operations effectively. And we shall support and we shall advise you freely, including how to do it, and actually come out national heroes and still attain your object. Meaning that actually, particularly, if it's the case that Kizza Besigye was up to genuine no mischief, Robert will agree with me. If Besigye was, this is a very terrible regime. I call it actually an illegitimate regime because they're illegitimate. Officially, Othieno says any regime is illegitimate. But if somehow Besigye was organizing something with mischief in Nairobi, and the majority of people who believe like me that this is an illegitimate regime, and they did so and used the due process in law in Kenya, use the due process here in Uganda, they'll actually have sympathy and they'll have support. But in the unlikely event that they don't have sympathy and support, they will be recognized and acknowledged that they're doing what they're supposed to do as a sitting government in any way. So really, just do things properly. At the moment, your power is big. Of course, some of us also have intelligence that some things are not as good as they show on the surface. But NRA is not in such a desperate state in which maybe their friends, the Okelos, were in September, October 1985. So why go to those extremes and make yourselves look so stupid, making sure that the mastered nonsense, mastered lies that Museveni and others wrote, they're now just comic stuff for the future children in a future post-UPE primary education for history classes. It's a pity.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Othieno and Dr. Ojambo, for your insights and, of course, words of wisdom today to give some.
We had the panel.
Yes, triple O, triple O panel to give insight on this debate, and this matter regarding Dr. Kizza Besigye, who, of course, is a matter of national concern, not just because of the incident, but what it means going forward, what precedents is set, like Mr. Othieno stated. We thank you very much for listening in. I hope that you have managed to pick something. Let's keep these debates about the civics of our country going as we work together, as always, to build on our collective national journey. It was a pleasure hosting you. I remain Okot Olaa. Thank you.